300 Rohan soldiers, including children and the elderly, facing 10,000 Uruk-hai. In front is a sea of bloodthirsty monsters. Behind is a cruel, sheer cliff with no way of retreat. If it were you, what would you do? In the history of world cinema, director Peter Jackson once faced a seemingly impossible problem: how to keep the audience engaged for 40 minutes of a battle where, from the very first second, the outcome seems to have been predetermined? How to tell a story soaked in despair, darkness, blood, and mud, yet turn it into an unreplicable masterpiece of visual storytelling. Today, we will peel back the flashy outer layer of visual effects, examining it through the lens of art and psychology to find the answer. Take a deep breath, because we are about to enter the longest night of Middle-earth, the siege of Helm's Deep. In cinema, the setting is not just a backdrop. It is a ruthless character, silently telling its own story. When King Theoden of the Kingdom of Rohan decides to lead his remnants and refugees to retreat to the Hornburg fortress at Helm's Deep, he believes he is seeking a safe haven. Historically speaking, the great stone deeping wall had never been breached. However, pay attention to how Peter Jackson's camera tells the story. Instead of using camera angles that glorify the massive scale of the fortress to reassure the audience, the director continuously uses extreme high-angle shots, looking down from the mountain peaks. This camera angle deliberately shrinks the fortress, forcing it to look dwarfed within the giant gorge surrounded by the jagged cliffs of the White Mountains. Through visual language, the film is screaming a cruel truth. This is not a military base for a counterattack. This is a giant mousetrap, a literal cul-de-sac. Once the only entrance is sealed, the people inside can only wait to die. The camera angle has stripped away the audience's tiniest glimmer of hope for a tactical retreat. Topographical despair is not enough. The next element that creates the terrifying weight of the opening segment is biological contrast. To create maximum empathy, the director does not cram the city walls with muscular super warriors swinging swords. Instead, the camera slowly glides across the faces of the defenders, panning shot, in close-up. What do we see? We see a one-eyed old man with white hair and beard trying to squeeze his scrawny body into moldy leather armor. We see a young boy, his eyes in absolute panic, his two hands clutching a spear made from a farming tool, an iron helmet askew on his head. There is no uniformity. There is no military discipline. They represent organic, primal, fragile life, full of human flaws. And on the opposite side, the approaching death does not bear the shape of nature. From the pitch-black darkness under the pouring rain, 10,000 Uruk-hai gradually reveal themselves. A low-angle shot, pointing upward, turns the horde of monsters into a moving wall of iron and steel, towering and overwhelming. Unlike normal orcs, who are chaotic and cowardly, the Uruk-hai are the product of cruel crossbreeding technology created by Saruman. They wear identical monolithic metal armors, marching to pre-programmed rhythms. They have no biodiversity, no families, no fear. The battle has not yet begun, but the visual contrast has exposed a profound philosophical theme. This is a clash between fragile nature and soulless industry. The pinnacle of psychological suffocation, tension building, in this opening segment is silence. Peter Jackson knows that waiting for death is even more terrifying than death itself. When the 10,000 Uruk-hai soldiers approach the wall, they do not rush up in a frenzied attack like in B-grade action movies. They abruptly stop. A deadly silence descends. The sound of pattering rain becomes the only echoing noise. The defending army on the wall strains their eyes looking down at the dark bottom of the abyss. They pant. Their white breath billows out in the bone-chilling cold. The nerves of both the characters and the audience are stretched to the point of snapping. Then suddenly, the commanding general of the monster horde lets out a brief roar. Tens of thousands of armored iron pikes simultaneously slam into the rocky ground in rhythm. Thud, thud, thud. That rhythm is slow, dry and steady like the grim reaper knocking on a door. It is perfect psychological warfare. It sends a wordless message up to the stone wall. We are here. We outnumber you 100 to 1, and we will tear you to pieces the moment the order is given. That sound reverberates in the chests of the Rohan farm boys, causing their bow-drawing hands to tremble violently. Everything has been pushed to the absolute extreme of suppression. The fuse has been lit. The audience holds their breath, waiting for a mighty charge cry to release the pressure. However, the director delivers the most unexpected slap, the most ironic plot twist to initiate this great bloodbath, an event completely not within the calculations of any general. Contrary to all audience expectations of an epic battle, starting with a heroic charge cry from the king or a cold, sharp order from a seasoned general, Peter Jackson chose a completely different approach. He stripped away all the romanticization of war. The fuse of the greatest battle of the Third Age actually originated from a mistake. Amidst the solidifyingly suffocating atmosphere, as tens of thousands of Uruk-hai monsters are slamming their pikes in a show of force, extreme fear overcomes the physicality of an old defending man on the wall. His scrawny fingers can no longer hold the tension of the bowstring. They slip. Thwack! The arrow flies aimlessly through the rain and embeds straight into the throat of a front-row Uruk-hai. He falls. The sound of pounding pikes immediately falls silent. A deadly silence takes place for less than a second, and then the leader of the monster horde lets out a savage roar. The floodgates of iron and steel are officially opened. Tens of thousands of Uruk-hai scream, charging toward the city wall like a pitch-black tsunami. This accidental fire technique is a brilliant touch of visual storytelling art. It nakedly depicts the fragility, weakness, and lack of control of humans, the nature faction, when facing the cruel pressure of a soulless army, the industrial faction. War is not glorious and orderly like in songs. War erupts from panic and bloodshed from the very first second. When the hand-to-hand combat erupts, the audience truly realizes the importance of a variable that the director cleverly planted just beforehand: the arrival of the elven reinforcements. In the extreme despair before the fighting broke out, the horn of Lothlorien rang out, bringing Haldir and the Galadrim army. Visually, this is a stunning contrast. Amidst the gloomy fortress and the shabby leather armors of Rohan, the elven army appears resplendent with gleaming golden armor, synchronized movements, and the composure of immortal beings. By bringing the elves into the Battle of Helm's Deep, a detail somewhat different from the original novel, the director not only adds epic beauty to the frame, but also conveys a philosophical message. In the darkest hour, the ancient light and the alliance of free living beings have not been forgotten. The discipline of the elves combined with the topographical advantage of the stone deeping wall temporarily held back the Uruk-hai tsunami. A series of siege ladders are pushed down, arrows are fired with precision, hope begins to flicker in the eyes of the audience. It seems that as long as they persevere, this fortress truly cannot be breached. But Peter Jackson is a master of the plot twist. He gives you a glimmer of hope, only to snatch it away and throw it straight into the furnace. In the distance, amidst the chaotic sea of slaughtering monsters, a strange scene unfolds. The Uruk-hai ranks part to the sides, creating a pathway in the middle. A giant Uruk-hai, called a berserker, wearing no armor, his flesh painted with white blood, holding a blazing torch in his hand, roars and charges toward the base of the wall. Aragorn, with a keen battlefield intuition, realizes the anomaly. He screams a command in Elvish. "Legolas, shoot him! Kill him now!" The camera angle now uses a slow motion technique to prolong the tension to the absolute maximum. Legolas draws his bow. The first arrow embeds into the berserker's shoulder. He staggers, but does not fall. The second arrow pierces through his chest. He still drags himself forward, his fanatical eyes locked on the water culvert. at the foot of the sturdiest stone wall in Middle-earth. He throws himself down, along with the torch. The director abruptly mutes all battlefield sound. Boom! The explosion of the Orthanc explosive, the blasting fire, is not just an eye-pleasing visual effect, VFX, it is a philosophical shock to the entire continent of Middle-earth. Until that night, war was still limited to swords, spears, and muscle. Saruman brought to the battlefield a weapon of mass destruction, a product of technology and the decay of knowledge. The explosion ripped apart the innocence of the defending faction. The giant stone wall, the symbol of protection, the sole belief keeping the kingdom of Rohan alive, was leveled in just the blink of an eye. Water from the deeping stream floods in, carrying tens of thousands of Uruk-hai pouring through the breach. The gateway is blown wide open. No more city walls, no more topographical advantage. From this moment on, the tactical siege has officially turned into a bloody hand-to-hand slaughterhouse. The newly kindled hope is buried under the rubble. The survivors are separated, and the war to protect the kingdom is now merely a massacre to fight for every breath in despair. The explosion of the fire of Orthanc did not just shatter the deeping wall, it blew away the entire tactical structure of the siege. From the perspective of visual storytelling art, Peter Jackson completely shifted the tone and rhythm of the film. There are no longer still, wide-angle shots showing off troop deployment skills. The camera now plunges straight into the middle of the crowd, shaking violently, capturing close-ups of frenzied hacking and slashing, with blood and mud splattering everywhere. The viewer is forced to experience the extreme chaos of hand-to-hand combat, where there are no tactics other than primal survival instincts. The Uruk-hai pour through the breach like a swarm of giant black ants swallowing their prey. Rohan's defense line crumbles. Right amidst that chaos, the director created one of the most epic, somber notes of the film, the death of the elves. In Tolkien's mythological system, elves are immortal beings. They can live until the end of time in radiant forests, or the fairy realm of Valinor. However, at Helm's Deep tonight, those immortal lives fall upon pools of black mud beneath the rusted blades of artificial monsters. D.D. When the elven general Haldir is slashed from behind by an Uruk-hai, Peter Jackson used the sound isolation technique. All the screaming and clashing metal of the battlefield are muted, giving way to an elegy echoing in the ears. The camera slow motions Haldir's stunned face. His eyes sweep across the battlefield, seeing the golden armored corpses of his compatriots lying strewn amidst pools of blood and freezing rain. Through those eyes, cinema tells an agonizing, wordless story. The death of the elves is not just the loss of lives, but a symbol of the fading of a glorious, magical era, a great yet bitter sacrifice for the world of men. The collapse of the stone wall pushed the defending faction into the narrowest space of the battlefield, holding out inside the Hornburg keep. Through spatial storytelling, the film is suffocating the characters. From the wide valley, they are forced onto the wall. From the wall, they are forced into the small courtyard. And now, they are locked tight within a dark great hall, lit only by a few flickering torches. A feeling of claustrophobia weighs heavily on every frame. Outside, tens of thousands of Uruk-hai use a giant armored tree trunk to continuously ram the wooden gates. With every ram, the hinges groan, and splinters of wood fly out, shredding the last hope to pieces. Inside the hall, King Theoden seems to have reached the limits of human endurance. He looks at the wounded soldiers, the women and children trembling and crying in the underground caves right beneath their feet. The king's eyes are glassy, lost. "So much death," Theoden whispers, a line containing humanity's surrender to evil. What can men do against such reckless hate? Theoden's question is the core theme of the entire film times The Two Towers. When facing a ferocious force, with no moral boundaries and completely superior in strength, should mankind give up? But Aragorn, the embodiment of the immortal will of the ancient kings, did not let the darkness swallow Theoden. He approaches, not to advise the king to surrender, but to remind him of the most glorious death. "Ride out with me," Aragorn suggests. "Ride out and meet them." The decision to open the city gates is not an outstanding military tactic aimed at achieving victory. By all normal logic, a few dozen cavalrymen charging out into the midst of 10,000 long-pike soldiers is a suicidal act, but psychologically and philosophically, it is the greatest act of defiance. They refuse to be slaughtered like rats in a dark hole. They choose to determine their own fate, to die on horseback, with swords swung high, true to the proud identity of the kingdom of Rohan. Gimli climbs the high tower, blowing the giant buffalo horn of Helm Hammerhand. The sound shakes the entire mountain range, echoing into the belly of the abyss, signaling the final uprising of human pride. Below, King Theoden and the last cavalrymen have mounted their horses. The wooden gates splinter. Director Peter Jackson created an ultimate masterpiece of visual contrast. A small group of cavalry on stark white horses, charging straight out from the darkness of the fortress, smashing into the dense black sea of swarming monsters outside. The momentum of extreme bravery ripped through the Uruk-hai ranks on the stone bridge. They are writing an epic conclusion for themselves with their own hands. But they do not know that, on that distant eastern horizon, the night is receding, and a miracle of light, a miracle that cinema has incubated throughout the darkest 40 minutes, is about to manifest. The death charge of King Theoden and his exhausted group of cavalry on the stone bridge before the gates of the Hornburg is a great image of pride. But no matter how great the bravery, a few dozen men cannot defeat tens of thousands of pikes from the industrial machine of Isengard. They are exhausted. The monsters begin to close the encirclement. Right at that life-or-death moment, Peter Jackson's visual storytelling art executes the greatest plot twist, a shift of light that alters the entire landscape of fantasy cinema. Aragorn, amidst the bloody encirclement, suddenly recalls Gandalf's instruction before parting ways. "Look to my coming at first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east." The camera angle at this moment executes a breathtaking pan from the dark, muddy, and deadly bottom of the valley, sweeping up to the towering hilltop. There, on the steep mountain slope, a rider cloaked in stark white appears on the back of the legendary horse Shadowfax. It is Gandalf the White. He is not alone. Right beside him, Éomer, the young general who had been exiled, raises his spear high. And from behind them, like a miracle rising from the bosom of Mother Earth, 2,000 Rohirrim cavalry line up across, completely filling the horizon. But how can cavalry charge straight down a steep slope and ram into a pike phalanx without being crushed? This is exactly when the film showcases top-tier tactical thinking, where magic is not bolts of lightning shooting from a staff, but the manipulation of the laws of physics and nature. Gandalf does not use magic to incinerate the enemy. He uses a far more devastating weapon against creatures born in dark mud pits: sunlight. As Éomer's cavalry begins to charge down the steep slope, the sun also just happens to crest from behind their backs. The cinematography technique of director of photography Andrew Lesnie in this sequence deserves to be put into cinema textbooks. Instead of shooting the cavalry scene from a horizontal perspective, the camera is placed times behind, times the ranks of the Uruk-hai army, pointing upward at the hill. The audience is placed into the perspective of the monster horde, and what happens? A lens flare effect from the blinding sun shines straight into the lens. The entire screen is flooded in a brilliant white halo, burning the vision. For the Uruk-hai, accustomed to living in darkness, this sudden intensity of light is a torture. They are temporarily blinded. Dazzled and panicked, the first line of pikes of the Uruk-hai is forced to lower their weapons, raising their shields and arms to cover their eyes. Just a split second of the pike line being broken, the terrifying momentum of 2,000 war horses charging down from the high slope does the rest of the job. That horrific collision not only rips apart the formation of Saruman's war machine, but also completely breaks the psychological compression of the audience over the past 40 minutes. It is absolute catharsis. The tide is completely turned. Nature has defeated industry. Light has dispelled darkness. The remnant Uruk-hai run away in a panic into the magical Horn forest and forever have no way back out. The siege of Helm's Deep concludes, leaving a massive legacy for the history of cinema. The pinnacle of this battle does not lie in CGI technology or the number of extras reaching into the thousands. Its greatness lies in how the filmmakers constructed a perfect emotional arc through visual language. From the suffocation of the cul-de-sac topography, the chilling contrast between fragile farm boys and the soulless monster legion, the pressure-filled slip of the hand creating the first arrow, to the era-defining shock of the explosive shattering the stone wall. Every frame, every camera angle, every silence of sound serves a single purpose: pushing the characters and the viewers deep into the bottom of despair, so that from the bottom of that abyss, the value of faith, comradeship, and the will to live can shine in the most blinding and meaningful way at dawn on the fifth day. Jackson proved a truth of fantasy storytelling art. A victory is only truly great when the price paid for it is authentic and cruel to the point of making us breathless. The 40 minutes of Helm's Deep is not just an action scene. It is a survival, horror film, an elegy, and ultimately, a triumphant hymn of the human spirit.